Welcome to the Breakaway Podcast, recorded on the campus of Texas A&M. For more information, check out our website at breakawayministries.org. We hope you enjoy the message.
Well, howdy, I'm Timothy Ateek, Executive Director of Breakaway Ministries, and I just wanted to let you know that we just finished our last night of giving in person at Reed for our 2017 Shalom Project. We've been working toward a goal of $119,000 over the last 4 weeks, and at this moment, we have raised $116,754.15, which is just incredible. And now we have about a week and a half left where people can still jump in with us. And so I just wanted to give you a quick invitation and say we would love for you to help us not just reach our goal, but crush our goal. Because ultimately, this is not a project focused on reaching a goal. It's about reaching people. So the more money we raise, the more people we will be able to impact. For all the details, check out our website, breakawayministries.org. Thanks so much for listening, and I hope you enjoy the talk. Well, this week I found myself thinking about morally neutral things that can become good or bad depending on how they are being viewed and used. So let me just give you a few examples of what I'm talking about. Things that are morally neutral that can become good or bad depending on how they're viewed or used. The first example is the word moist. Moist is by far, hands down, my least favorite word in the English language. Moist is technically morally neutral. And it can be a good thing. It can be a good thing if the word moist is used in reference to a cake. But the word moist can become a very bad thing when it's referring to a guy's locker room. That's true. That's just true. Second example I can give you is Instagram. Okay? Instagram is morally neutral, and it can be a really good thing if you take pictures of you and your family or your friends and you post them so the whole world can see them. But Instagram can be a really bad thing when especially you guys take a picture of yourself right after a workout without your shirt on, subtly flexing in the mirror. Stop it. I hope you're not clapping because you do that. I hope you're clapping in solidarity with me. Okay, anyway. A third example is simply texting. Texting is morally neutral, right? And texting can be really good because with texting, it gives you the opportunity to flex or flirt text with your boyfriend or girlfriend. But texting can be a bad thing when you use texting to communicate something to someone that you don't feel comfortable saying to their face. For example, I don't know, let's break up, okay? These things are morally neutral things, and they become good or bad depending on how they're viewed and used. There are countless morally neutral things in our world. And they either become good things or bad things depending upon how we use them. Money is one of these morally neutral things. I hope you realize that money is actually a morally neutral thing. The Bible does not say that money is a root of all kinds of evils. No, the Bible says that the love of money is a root of all kinds of evils. Money is something that is morally neutral, and it has massive potential for good, but then it also has massive potential for harm depending upon how it's viewed and used. And so we need to talk about it because money is a major aspect of our lives. It is. Some of you guys are well acquainted with money right now because you just checked your bank account balance today or sometime this week and you've realized that you have overdrawn your account. I don't know if you've ever had that experience where you have overdrawn your account and now you have a fee to pay, which is just so ironic that you now have to pay money because you had no money. But money is a really significant part of our lives because if you think about it, you cannot live without money. Not in this world, you cannot live without money. Money is something you have to function in this world. Money impacts where you eat and what you eat. It impacts where you live. It impacts when you go out with your friends and when you just stay home. It'll impact when you propose and what kind of wedding you will have. Money will be a part of the conversation when figuring out where you will work after college. Money will influence your decision whether or not you'll go to grad school. Money will influence whether you end up back at Texas A&M University next semester. Money is a very important part of life. That's why 16 out of 38 of Jesus' parables in the Gospels were about money. That's why more is said about money in the New Testament than heaven and hell combined. That's why in the Gospels, 1 out of 10 verses deal directly with the subject of money. Money is so important that Jesus says, where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Jesus is saying money is so important that your affections, your desires, your passions will in some way be linked to your money. Now let's just be clear, money is morally neutral, but it has massive potential for good and it also has massive potential for harm. And it all comes down to this. It all comes down to whether you will have your money or your money will have you. That's what it comes down to. Will you have your money or will your money have you? Let me just position it a different way. Whether you will experience joy or unnecessary pain as a result of your money is contingent upon whether you view your money as a gift or as a god. So let's talk about it tonight. If you have a Bible, I want you to join me tonight in Ecclesiastes chapter 5. Ecclesiastes chapter 5. If you're just jumping in with us this semester, we've been journeying through the book of Ecclesiastes. And I absolutely love this book. I firmly believe it's the most applicable book in the Bible to our lives. If you just want one sentence that just sums up the book of Ecclesiastes, it's this: Ecclesiastes helps us understand how to live life well in a broken and busted world. That's it. Every single person here can benefit from that, so I'm glad you're here tonight. But King Solomon is going to talk about money, and I think it's just good for us to remind ourselves of who King Solomon was. King Solomon was by far the wealthiest, richest person in the world at his time. Some would argue that he's the richest person that ever walked on the face of the earth. Here's a guy who never had to keep a budget. Here's a guy who never had to eat at home to save money. Here's a guy who never had to say no to himself. People estimate that his annual income was somewhere over $1 billion. So what that means is when he logged into his account to check his bottom line, he saw 9 zeros. So the reason that I just remind you of kind of who's talking is this: if Solomon has something to say about money, we should probably listen, because money was kind of in Solomon's wheelhouse. So let's look at what he says. He says this, starting in verse 10. I'm going to read you chapter 5, verses 10 through 12. He says this: "He who loves money will not be satisfied with money, nor he who loves wealth with his income. This also is vanity. When goods increase, they increase who eat them. And what advantage has their owner but to see them with his eyes? Sweet is the sleep of a laborer, whether he eats little or much, but the full stomach of the rich will not let him sleep. So Solomon starts and he says, he who loves money will not be satisfied with money. And that word love, it can be used to refer to the love you have for a family member or a lover, but it can also be used in reference to your appetite. And I think that that's really an appropriate translation, because if you look at the context, Solomon is talking about the idea of satisfaction and fulfillment. So he's talking about what you hunger for, what your appetite is directed towards. He's kind of envisioning, what do you look to satisfy the deepest longings of your soul? And his conclusion is this: if you believe that money is the thing that will make you full, you will go hungry. That's what he's saying. He's saying, he who loves money will not be satisfied. This is the richest man to ever walk the face of the planet, is saying, money will leave you hungry. Think about it. Money can do a lot of things. It really can. It can make you feel secure. If you go and you check your bank account balance and you see more money than you thought you had, it can make you feel really secure. Like, man, I've got some room to spend. I'm in a good place. It can make you feel secure. It can also make you feel significant. Because if you have more money than someone else, then that means that you can afford some things that other people can't. And so you might be able to drive a certain car or buy certain clothes that will make you feel more important than other people. Money can also help you feel relief. Man, when the stuff kind of hits the fan in your life and life is going poorly, going and buying stuff can sure make you feel good, at least in the moment. You can kind of medicate or numb your pain with making purchases. So money can give you relief. It can. It can do these things temporarily. It can give you temporary security, temporary significance, temporary relief. But the key word is temporary. Money cannot do anything lasting. You will either have to keep accumulating or keep spending to get something from money. John D. Rockefeller, who was at one point considered the richest man in the world, the story goes that someone asked him, how much money is enough? And the story goes that his response was this: just a little bit more. Rockefeller, richest man in the world. How much money is enough? Just a little bit more. I might be wrong, but it seems like the more money you have, the more you want. The more you spend, the more you want to spend. According to Solomon, it cannot satisfy you. Money cannot satisfy you. And I want you to see what Solomon is really saying here. What he's telling us is this, and please don't miss it. His point is this: money is a lousy God. See, you need to decide who or what in this world is your God. A God, that which you look to satisfy you and give you meaning, at least in that moment, is your God. That's what a God does. A God satisfies you and gives you meaning. So if you look to someone or something in this world to give you satisfaction and meaning, at least in that moment, that thing is your God. What Solomon is saying is this: money is a lousy God. It is. And when you make money your God, that's when something that's morally neutral begins to go bad in your life. And it can turn to harm, because it's like trying to hydrate with salt water. The more you have, the more you want. So what Solomon is going to do now in the rest of this passage is he's going to show us why money is such a lousy God. And I want you to leave here tonight clear on that. I want you to see clearly why money is such a lousy God and how it will go bad for you when you make money the object of your time, your attention, and your affection. I'm going to give you 4 reasons why money is a lousy God. Here's the first one. The first reason that money is a lousy God is because it has side effects. Money is a lousy god because it has side effects. You ever seen those commercials for medicine where towards the end of the commercial there's this soft, soothing voice that kind of comes on and starts telling you the side effects? You know what I'm talking about? It's those drug commercials where like there's really nice and uplifting music playing and people are smiling and playing with their families and like petting their dog or like sitting in a bathtub on a beach next to their lover who's in a different bathtub, and I'm just like, how did you get those bathtubs on the beach? Like, did you bring your own or did you just stumble up? Anyway, okay, so there's that going on. And then towards the end, there's this very soothing voice that's like, talk to your doctor before you use this medicine. This medicine, if used, could cause nausea, diarrhea, vomiting, demon possession, and even death. There's different things. I mean, that's just kind of some pills that I was looking into. But anyway, in reality, it doesn't matter how helpful and effective the medication will be. There will be side effects. There are. And it's the same with money. It doesn't matter how helpful money will be to your life. There will be side effects to money. And Solomon gives us two of the side effects. He's not giving us an exhaustive list, but he just gives us two. And here they are. Money will increase your so-called friends, and it will increase complexity in your life. So just watch this. Verse 11, look at what he says. He says, when goods increase, they increase who eat them. And what advantage has their owner but to see them with his eyes? So what Solomon is saying is the more money you have, the more supposed friends you're going to get. Because what's going to happen is people are going to see you for your money, and they're going to want to get near to you, hoping to get something from you. One source said about John Rockefeller, the richest man in the world during his time of life. One source said that by the late 1880s, he was receiving thousands of letters a week asking for charitable donations. One historian said that he was stalked, badgered, harassed, and followed wherever he went. He couldn't walk down the aisle at his church without people asking him for some money. Now, if you want an example that's a little more modern day, it was still over 10 years ago, but I'm pretty sure Kanye West wrote a song based off of Ecclesiastes 5:11. It's called Gold Digger. Think about it. What does Solomon say? He says, when goods increase, they increase who eat them. So Kanye talks about having to take his girls' 4 kids to Showbiz Pizza. And what does he say? He says, okay, get your kids. And then they got their friends. I pulled up in the bins. They all got up in. We all went to din. And then I had to pay. What's he saying? You get your kids and your friends, and I'm strapped with the bill. Because that's what happens. The more money you have, the more supposed friends you get. I wouldn't be surprised if some of my wealthier friends get asked weekly to consider investing in a new business venture or to support the work of a nonprofit. Why? Because people see them for their money. The more money you have, the more friends you will have. And here's the thing, when money is your God, you know what will happen? You want to know how it will turn to harm? Is you'll become cynical about people. You'll become cynical about people. You will begin to assume the worst of people. And you know what else you'll do? Is you'll begin to grip your stuff more tightly. And you'll believe that every person you have a conversation with has some hidden agenda to get at your stuff. And so you won't be able to trust people, and you'll withdraw into isolation. And you'll be less charitable. That's how it'll go bad for you. The second side effect that Solomon gives us is that it increases complexity and responsibility. Look at what he says, verse 12. He says, "Sweet is the sleep of a laborer, whether he eats little or much, but the full stomach of the rich will not let him sleep." See, money doesn't just increase your possessions or the extravagance of your plans or your freedom to do or buy whatever you want. It also increases complexity and responsibility. And so what Solomon does is he contrasts two people. He contrasts a rich man or woman with someone who makes a very modest income. And so the person who makes a very modest income basically wakes up, goes to work, does their job, gets paid a small amount. Maybe it's enough, maybe it's not, and then they go to bed, they get up and do it all over. But the rich man or woman is pictured tossing and turning at bed at night. Why? Because of the complexity and now the responsibility of his life. See, the more you have, the more there is to manage. And the more stuff you have, the more potential there is for something to break. I was talking with a friend of mine whose parents have this massive mansion on Lake LBJ. It just sits on a peninsula, and their house has 8 different air conditioning units. It has well over 100 different sprinkler heads in the yard just to keep the grass clean. Can you imagine the nightmare it is just having to tune up the sprinkler system? The more stuff you have, the more there is to manage. Big houses are nice, but someone has to clean them. Swimming pools, an extravagant landscape can be beautiful, but someone has to clean the pool and keep up the yard. A lake house or ranch house is awesome, but someone has to pay all those bills and look after the place. And you can say, well, if I have enough money to have those things, I can have enough money to pay someone to take care of it. That's great. But you also have to find the people who can do the work. You have to pay those people, and then you have to ensure that they are doing the job right. You see, money increases complexity and responsibility. Now, just to be clear, I am not trying to discourage you from making a bunch of money and having a lake house or a ranch. Please have a lake house and ranch and let the Breakaway staff use it. We would love to do that. I'm just trying to help you see that there are side effects to money. Money increases complexity and responsibility. And when money is your God, you know what happens? It amplifies your stress. So you become that guy tossing and turning in your bed at night because you can't sleep, because your mind is consumed with your stuff. You can't go to sleep without checking the bottom line of your bank account, even though you know that there's more than enough in it. And you don't have time to enjoy your stuff because you're too busy trying to control your stuff. And you struggle to let anyone else enjoy your stuff because you fear that they might screw it up. So you grip things tightly. And instead of enjoyment, there's control. See, that's what happens when money shifts towards being a god in your life. See, money is a lousy god because it has side effects. Next, money is a lousy god because it can be lost. Money is a lousy god because it can be lost. Look at verses 13 through 17. Look at what it says. There's a grievous evil that I've seen under the sun. Riches were kept by their owner to his hurt, and those riches were lost in a bad venture. And he's a father of a son, but he has nothing in his hand. As he came from his mother's womb, he shall go again, naked as he came, and shall take nothing for his toil that he may carry away in his hand. This also is a grievous evil. Just as he came, so shall he go. And what gain is there to him who toils for the wind? Moreover, all his days he eats in darkness, in much vexation and sickness and anger. Solomon pictures a guy who loses everything in a bad venture. He goes from riches to rags. See, the reality in this world is you can lose all your money practically overnight, and sometimes it's your fault. If you take everything you have and you take it to Vegas, man, you can lose it overnight and it's on you. But then there's times where the market crashes like it did in 2008. And it leaves your investments, it leaves your retirement, it leaves your savings devastated. This weekend, I was just looking through Twitter, and this guy had posted this article, and so I just clicked on it and I started reading, and what I was reading was a modern-day example of this exact story in Ecclesiastes. And it's an article about a guy named David Rather, who was a writer for the TV sitcom Roseanne, which was on years ago. You might not even remember or have heard of this sitcom, but it was a very popular TV show. And he was a writer for it. And let me just read you the first 2 paragraphs of the article. Here's what it says. It says, on Christmas Day, 2001, I sat down at my Yamaha G2 grand piano, set up my metronome, and opened up a book called Preludes. It was late afternoon, and the warm orange light of the fading day poured into my 5-bedroom house, paid for by my $300,000 a year income as a Hollywood comedy writer in San Marino, California, a wealthy suburb of Los Angeles. My wife, Marina, was cooking dinner for me and our 8 children, and it was as happy a Christmas afternoon as I would ever have. On Christmas morning, 2008, I woke up on the floor of the 1997 Chrysler minivan I lived in, parked behind the Kinko's just 2 miles from my old house in San Marino. It was raining and I was cold, even though I had slept in 3 layers of clothes. And the article is about how this very successful man graduated with honors from college, went on to be a successful writer for a TV sitcom. His name was in the credits, making hundreds of thousands of dollars, lost everything and ended up homeless. He basically decided that he had saved up enough money to take some time off to focus on his family, so he quit the TV show, and he decided to take 2 years to just focus on his family. And after 2 years, he tried to get a job and couldn't land one, and then the market crashed. He went to Trader Joe's seeking out a job. They looked at him and they said, "Sir, do you really want a job here?" And then they gave the job to the 24-year-old girl with the purple hair. That's what it says in the article. And then he detailed what it was like being homeless. Waking up at 4 a.m., warming up in Starbucks, going to the library, using the internet to search for jobs. He didn't become an alcoholic. He didn't become a drug addict. He was a guy who simply could not land a job in this world. Lost everything. And when you lose everything in your life, and money is your God, this passage tells us what your response will be. It says, all the days he eats in darkness, in much vexation, in sickness, and in anger. See, money's a lousy God because it can be lost. And when you make it your God, you know what will happen? You will spend the rest of your life playing the victim card. And you'll spend your life walking in bitterness towards this world. And you'll spend all of your days living in the glory years in your mind, wishing that you could just go back to a better time. You know what I loved about this article? Is because he didn't blame anyone. And there was no bitterness. Somehow he experienced contentment, even though to this day he hasn't landed a steady job. See, money is a lousy God because it can be lost. And if you make it your God, you will spend your life worrying and angry and bitter. How comforting are the words of Hebrews 13:5. Look at what it says. It says, keep your life free from the love of money, and be content with what you have, for he has said, I will never leave you nor forsake you. You know what? You might lose your money, but God will never lose you. And that's good news. The third reason why money is a lousy God is this. Money is a lousy God because its intended purpose is to be a gift. Look at what Solomon says in verses 18 and 19. He says, "Behold, what I have seen to be good and fitting." Now let's just clue in here, because we've been talking about what happens when a morally neutral thing is used for bad. Money can bring harm to your life. But now Solomon is kind of saying, let's talk about what's good. Let's talk about how money can be used for good and it can be a blessing in your life. He says, "Behold, what I have seen to be good and fitting." That means what's appropriate for life in this world. We want to know what is fitting for life in this world. What I've seen to be good and fitting is to eat and drink and find enjoyment in all the toil with which one toils under the sun, the few days of his life that God has given him, for this is his lot. Everyone also to whom God has given wealth and possessions and power to enjoy them and to accept his lot and rejoice in his toil, this is a gift from God. So I want you to see the words that are repeated multiple times in this verse. We see two different things. We see the word enjoyment and enjoy. And then we see gift from God. We see the word given, that certain things have been given by God. Certain things are gifts from God. So the first thing that Solomon says is your life is a gift from God. Your life isn't a given, it's a gift. If you wake up tomorrow morning and you have breath in your lungs, that's not a given. It's not a given you're going to wake up. But if you do, that's a gift from God. Your life is a gift. And not just your life is a gift, everything you have is a gift from God. Any wealth, any possessions are gifts from God. It's interesting, as I was preparing for this message, I kept wanting to find quotes from people saying, being rich is miserable. That's what I wanted to find. And then I read this, I was like, no, being rich isn't just a good thing, it can be a God thing. Now, what I'm not saying is that if you're godly, you will be rich. And what I'm not saying is if God loves you and you love God, you're going to be rich. What I am saying is that riches in a person's life can be a demonstration of God's grace in that particular person's life. Solomon is saying your life is a gift, and any money you have is a gift, and they're to be enjoyed. Enjoy money. That's what Solomon is saying. Enjoy it. Eat good food. Do great things with your friends. Go on great vacations. Enjoy life. God has given you the gift of money, so enjoy it. But what Solomon is also doing right here is he is putting money in its rightful place. See, the only thing that money should ever be in your life is a gift from God. It shouldn't be a God itself. It should just be a gift. And when money has its rightful place in your life, and when money is viewed simply as a gift, look at what happens in verse 20. It says this. It says, "For he will not much remember the days of his life, because God keeps him occupied with joy in his heart." Do you see it? Here's a guy who experiences peace because he views money as a gift. See, when you view money as a gift, it's nice to have, but you don't have to have it because it's a gift. It's nice to have, but you don't have to have it. But what you have to realize is anytime you make something out to be God that is not God, the result is always disappointment and emptiness. It is. It is always emptiness and disappointment. So put money in its rightful place. Let it be a gift. Let me just give you two things that you can do to ensure that money will be a gift and not a God in your life. Here it is. Don't miss them. Number one, discipline yourself to thank God for what you do have instead of complaining about what you don't have. Be thankful for what you do have instead of complaining about what you don't have. And then the second thing, do this. View everything you have as belonging to God. View everything you have as God's. That didn't come out right. Everything you have belongs to God. That's it. So don't view yourself as owning things, view yourself as stewarding things. One of my favorite stories is I was working at this wakeboard camp, and there was just this row of really nice $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 wakeboard boats. And I was walking down the row, and I saw my friend David, who owns one of these very nice $60,000, $70,000 wakeboard boats. And I just saw him standing there looking at his seat. And what you need to know about David is he sold his company years ago, made millions, and has been retired now for well over 10 years. And I just saw him standing there looking at his boat. And I just said, David, what's wrong? And he was like, well, he had been driving around some middle school girls, I think, and they had brought Sharpies on his boat. And now there was Sharpie on the seat of his very expensive wakeboard boat. And I said, David, what's going on? And this was his response. He said, I was just standing here wondering why God wanted Sharpie on his boat. And that has stuck with me for years. Because what he was saying is, if God wants Sharpie on his boat, then he can have Sharpie on his boat. I wouldn't put it there, but if he decides to decorate his boat with Sharpie, then I guess I need to be on board with that. And so here's a guy who can enjoy his boat, and he can let other people enjoy his boat because his boat is simply a gift from God. It's not a God itself. And he has a bunch of stuff that he lets people use all the time. His house always has people staying in it. He is constantly doing things for people, spending money on people. He's actually decided that anyone who comes and asks him for money, he feels like he should give to them. And so you go and you look at their fridge, and their fridge is just covered with newsletters from missionaries. Because he believes that everything he owns belongs to God. And it's a gift from God. He doesn't own it, he's just going to steward it. And so I encourage you, view everything you have as belonging to God. Because when you do that, you can give radically. You can give generously instead of gripping your things tightly. The last reason that money is a lousy God is this. Don't miss it. Money is a lousy God because no matter how much money you have, you will still need Jesus. No matter how much money you have, you will still need Jesus. I just want to take the last few minutes that I have, and I want to talk for a moment just about Judas, the life of Judas. I love talking about the life of Judas, and I know that sounds weird because you probably don't hear many people like, man, I just love Judas. I mean, he's my boy. He just kind of gets me, okay? But I don't know if you've ever noticed this. Look at what it says in Matthew 26. It says this about Judas. It says, then one of the 12, whose name was Judas Iscariot, went to the chief priests. And look at what he asked the chief priests. Here's what he said. What will you give me if I deliver him over to you? And they paid him 30 pieces of silver. And from that moment, he sought an opportunity to betray him. So Judas seeks out the chief priest, and what's his question to him? His question is, what will you give me? It's a question about money. How much is the Son of God worth to you guys? It's a question about money. Now, look at what happens in John chapter 12. This is just days before he strikes up this deal with the chief priest. Here's what it says. Just to give you a little background on the story, Jesus is in a home with his friends, and this woman comes and breaks open an expensive bottle of ointment and begins anointing Jesus' feet. And it says this, but Judas Iscariot, one of Jesus' disciples, he who was about to betray him, said, why was this ointment not sold for 300 denarii and given to the poor? And then John, the author, gives us this insight. He said this not because he cared about the poor, but because he was a thief. And having charge of the money bag, he used to help himself to what was put in it. So here's what I want you to do. Put the two passages together. In one passage, we have Judas saying, what will you give me? How much money can I get? In the other one, we have Judas saying, why wasn't this sold for money to be given to the poor. And then the author tells us, you know why he said that? He said that because he was in charge of Jesus' bank account and he used to pilfer from Jesus. Put those two together and you know what you get? Judas was obsessed with money. Money was Judas's God. And so when Judas goes to the chief priest and says, what will you give me? All he's doing in that moment is declaring which God he needs most. He needs the God of money more than he needs the God of the universe, Jesus Christ. But do you know how Judas's life ends? It ends with him taking that 30 pieces of silver, going out, buying a field, and committing suicide. Something in me just wonders if he got the 30 pieces of silver and he couldn't wait to get it. He was just thinking, this is it. This is what my soul has been longing for. If I can just have more money, just like Rockefeller, just a little bit more, 30 pieces of silver. I just pictured Judas taking that money and running it through his fingers, hoping, longing, expecting to experience satisfaction. And you know what he experienced in that moment? Emptiness. And something in me wonders if in that moment he had the thought, I chose the wrong God. And he went out, bought a field, and committed suicide. See, the reality is that it didn't matter how much money Judas had, there was still brokenness in his heart. There was still brokenness in his heart. There were still longings for love. There were still longings inside his soul for love, acceptance and approval and significance and peace and pleasure. There were still longings that money could not satisfy. You know what was still inside of his heart? There was still a longing in his heart for Jesus. Jim Carrey, a famous actor, said this about money and fame. I think everybody should get rich and famous and do everything they ever dreamed of so that they can see it's not the answer. Because Jesus is the answer. Blaise Pascal put it this way, there is a God-shaped vacuum in the heart of every man which cannot be filled by any created thing, but only by God, the Creator, made known through Jesus Christ. The reality is it doesn't matter how much money you have. You can never buy your way into a right relationship with God. You can never buy your way into a right relationship with God. It doesn't matter how much stuff you have. You can never be impressive enough to a perfect God. It's not possible. You can never strike up a financial deal with God to let you into his family, but that's okay. You don't have to pay God for an eternal relationship with him because Jesus Christ has already made payment on your behalf. That's what he was doing on the cross. The cost for you to have a real relationship with the God of the universe is the blood of the Son of God. That's the cost. And Jesus Christ made payment. He made payment on the cross for you. His blood was shed. His body was crushed to make payment for you so that you don't have to try and gain enough money to strike up a deal with the God of the universe. You don't need to try and buy your way into the family of God because you were a child of wrath, and through faith in Jesus Christ, you can become a child of God because John 1:12 says, for as many as received him, he gave them the right to become children of God. What's going to keep you from getting to the end of your life and simply realizing I chose the wrong God? You know what? Enjoy money as a gift, but worship Jesus Christ as God and King. Money is a morally neutral thing. It has massive amounts of potential for good, and massive amounts of potential for harm. It really comes down to this. Will you have your money or will your money have you? Whether you experience joy or unnecessary pain as a result of money, it's really contingent upon this. Will you view money as a gift or as a God? Jesus Christ, and He alone, is our God and the one worthy of our worship. Let's pray together.